6 is a weird number to count down from.
G'day, live stream. James here from Lakeside Drives F1 podcast. Good to have your company as we do our Russian GP race review. Look, if you're here for the first time, how this works is we'll have a bit of a chat. It's a bit casual. What all you're doing really is watching us record the audio episode. So for whatever reason, if it's not sounding the best for you, don't stress, the audio podcast will be edited and uploaded shortly after this live stream finishes. So on average, we're going for about an hour at the moment. So by at least 7 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, you will be able to listen to all of our lovely voices. Thanks for joining us in the chat as well. Joshua, Mags, Hollandsworth, and Aya, great to have you here. And wherever you're watching or listening, it is great to have you here as well. All right, lads, are we ready to go?
Yep,
Ready
I'm good.
when you are.
All right,
Do I sound all right on the internet?
give us a thumbs up, chat, if Campy sounds all right. Look, I've asked the boys to reposition their microphones, so maybe you won't hear as much Campy heavy breathing, but no promises. Would we even be a podcast without Campy's heavy breathing?
Exactly. It's iconic at the stage.
All right, here we
Fall
go.
down time, boys.
Lando Norris gets the call wrong and plummets from 1st to 7th. Daniel Ricciardo comes home in 4th after a terrible pit stop, and Max Verstappen goes from 20th to 2nd. G'day there, my name is James Baldwin, and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drives F1 podcast. In this episode, we reviewed the Russian Grand Prix, and I'm joined by my friends and yours, the two Thomases. Tommy T, g'day mate.
G'day, mate.
And Campy, hello there, mate. How you doing?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Yes, we're doing very well. A long day for Tommy T, but look, he's here for some wonderful F1 action, aren't you, mate?
Yep.
Well, let's get straight into it. Look, a massive shout out to you. If you're watching on YouTube, it probably means you've seen the notification that we were going live, which means you've subscribed to the YouTube channel, which is fantastic. Since yesterday's pre-drinks podcast, which if you haven't listened or watched to that yet, you can go back and do that now as we talk about the Russian race beforehand. But we've had 25 people jump on the subs train from yesterday to today. So honestly, thank you. I really appreciate it. We are all doing it for the algorithm, as I keep saying, which is fantastic. But also make sure you jump across to our Discord server. We have a great community, a great engaged community there as well. It was going off chops as always last night. And a massive shout out to you if you're from the Discord as well. Lads, we have some more 5-star reviews, which is awesome. Quickly run through this, and thank you to you if you've taken the time to write to us and leave a review. John Zal, 5 stars from Australia, says, witty, laid back and insightful, the perfect blend of knowledge and humour touching on the entire grid, not just a Sky Sports British Golden Boys, which is very true. The best says, CDE in WDC, well-informed, opinionated and funny. These guys make Formula One even more interesting, like hanging out with your Aussie mates, the best F1 podcast going. He's from the US. A massive thank you to you, mate. Would give 6 stars if I could, says Braden H89. This podcast is brilliant. It's great to hear an Australian perspective on F1. Quality F1 chat with an Aussie bent, says Tilly Willie 13, or I think is from Wagga from memory, from questions he's asked before. Mate, thank you to you. You say relaxed yet informative. More than one Tommy doesn't take itself too seriously. We love that very much. So thank you. Thank you for leaving those reviews. Now, it's an important part of this episode, which the fans have wanted back. And I'm happy to bring it back for them. It is
I really want it back.
Tommy T's television broadcast review. Tommy T, tell us about the television broadcast. Give us a review of it, maybe. I don't know.
I both love and hate this because thank you for wanting it back, but also stuff you guys because now I have to watch more Bloody Sky. I feel like I have to pay attention.
Good.
I've got a couple of notes. I think I'm going to break it out into segments. I think there's just going to be one in the future, which is just crofty, stupid, idiotic quotes from throughout the weekend. The one I picked out this week is as heavy force as Meatloaf's lunch when describing the braking pressure for I can't remember who. What the hell kind of reference is that? Bloody hell. Crofty's just getting worse and worse, isn't he?
The whole thing.
I think one of my favourite parts was getting to see the Aston Martin boys run around in those old Astons. That was excellent.
Mhm.
Obviously, doing some promo stuff for the new Bond movie, which is coming out. But to see Seb in that old DB5, I think obviously not an actual DB5. That thing's a very movie-ready kind of action style one because I'm pretty sure it didn't come with a hydraulic handbrake. Anyway, but it was excellent. Seb is way better than Lance Stroll as a Bond. So that's good news. Also,
Brundle can still drive too.
Brundles looked very relaxed, didn't he? He wasn't very Stroll was scrambling at the wheel and kind of Brundle just looked very cruisy, didn't he, when he was trying to drift that thing?
I said this on the Discord last night. It does not do any credibility for Stroll's driving ability.
It doesn't. The guy was
He's
useless.
shit.
Probably because he gets driven around his whole life. He only car is an F1 car. I really enjoyed seeing Daniel Kvyat on the grid walk.
Yes.
That was excellent. Obviously, we were back in Russia, but he's there as a reserve driver for Alpine at the moment. But he hinted at trying to get back into some kind of Formula One in 2023 when a seat might be available. But he's just staying hungry, I think. And as Campy pointed out, he probably didn't deserve to lose his seat to some of these young rookies. So who knows? Could see him back. But he was great. He was better than Damon interviewing him.
Jeez, no good.
Not about Damon. Sorry, mate. And lastly, the arena on a grand piano is better than a national anthem, I think. Just okay. Is this the same kind of rules at the Olympics where you're not allowed to play any kind of Russian national anthem? So
Yeah, well, because we went to Sochi in the Russian Automotive Federation, not in Russia, because of the doping ban Russia's got for a couple of years. So that's why Mazepin's been driving under the RAF flag, which I'm not sure how the RAF actually feel about that, with RAF being from there.
It's all right because they just made the whole Haas car look like a flag anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, so overall then, what's your score for the weekend?
It's pretty average. I think it's probably a 7 out of 10.
Geez, that's a bit high.
Jeez.
Nah, 7 out of 10's average, I think. 7 out of 10's good.
Look, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I missed Lazenby for at least steering the ship in the right direction this weekend. And I got to tell you, the least amount of Hill and Herbert that I have to listen to, the better. Quite
Herbert
honestly, it is it's no good at all. That is true. Any points from you, Campy, for the television broadcast?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed we didn't get to hear the minor key national anthem. But see how I'm away for I wait for every year. Remember 2 years ago, or was it last year? Last year was excellent. Had the full, I think there was like 15 military personnel that military choir. It was a beautiful thing. It was a touch and go. It was good.
Well, we'll come back, I'm sure. Well, 7 out of 10 from Tommy T. Look, I'm going to give it probably 4.5 out of 10 because I was just not enjoying any of the commentary or talking at all. None of it was good this weekend. Just a quick shout out to those on the live stream. Hollinsworth and Tanner, thank you for staying up in the US. Tanner in Dallas and Hollinsworth in Mississippi. Great to have you here. You guys obviously must be in the US bin. That's nice. Hux from Melbourne. Welcome. Adam, did we watch the AFL Grand Final? I think we all did, didn't we?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well, I
What?
think Tommy T did. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh,
How did you watch
well.
it? What are you doing?
I was watching the rugby. One of the greatest games I've seen in a while.
Well, there you go.
New Zealand,
Well,
New Zealand,
let's-
South Africa. It was good.
There you go. At least you were happy. Right. Well, we need to talk about the key points of this race, boys, don't we? And the biggest one, before we even get to the next sort of slightly whinging point, is Daniel Ricciardo getting into P4 after what was a horrible, horrible pit stop. And he didn't really have a great enough start because of a lack of a slipstream of any one car. Overall, though, Tommy T, your thoughts on Daniel Rick's race and where he's ended up?
Yeah. I think the second phase of his start sucked, not because of his fault, because of just his positioning and what kind of happened around him. But he got off the line really well. He was doing everything he could. He kind of just got squeezed out and just lost that slipstream, unfortunately. But he made up for it, and he got back past Alonso, which I'm sure we'll talk about Alonso's antics on the opening lap.
yes.
But not sure what's going on there. Anyway, I think he did a great job. That late lunge that he did going into one of the final turns, awesome on Alonso. On tyres that are barely warm. Like, you knew he was out there, and he's a bit more of the old late-breaking Daniel Ricciardo, the last of the late breakers, as we love.
Yes.
Yeah, he said post-race that he had to get off the gas because he wasn't in the slipstream. Once he got it, like, for that, half a second or so, whatever, he wasn't accelerating. He just got absolutely swamped, but he did nothing wrong off the start, really, other than, he was slightly on the outside of Russell, which just compromised it, which is just
It's all
pissed me off.
Russell's fault, isn't it?
Russell shagged that whole race, really.
Yeah. He had no place being that far up the grid. As we spoke about in the pre-drinks podcast, it was purely a right place, right time on the right part of the track for him to get that position. And we saw Sainz and Norris just sail off into the summer, didn't we, Tommy T?
They did.
Whilst Russell was holding him up. And I guess that is one of the things about Sochi, which is not so good, is when he got stuck behind a couple of cars, with or without DRS, it is very difficult to pass. And we know that these tyres, although we said in the pre-drinks podcast, Campy, didn't we, that it wasn't necessarily a tyre degradation circuit, but we did see a bit of deg because I think of them just trying to follow so closely to each other to try and get a position back, which just worked against Daniel right from the beginning, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting. You saw Max come through the grid. Come through the grid starting from last. Not so much because, and the passes that he made, not so much because the car's so much better, but he had more downforce strapped onto that car so that he could brake so much later into those. Particularly in the turn 4. I think I'll call it turn 3 yesterday, but turn 4, that's where he made the majority of his moves stick because he could just get off the downforce and just, and he.
But you saw it in the other formulas, which we haven't talked about yet. Whoops. Oscar was making great moves in F2, and you could see that those cars were set up way better to follow closer. They could brake later. They could get. It was just way better racing, to be honest. Watching around Sochi anyway, those cars are set up way better, and really that's what we're going to get with these new regs, being able to follow closer, see closer racing. But like you said, I think they were trying to follow close during the race, but it just meant they had to suffer the tyre deg, which you usually wouldn't get at a place like Sochi like this. So,
well, we'll come to F2 and F3 in a second, but let's talk, Campy, about Lando Norris and what happened at the very end of the race. All right, just go for it. I might as well just let you off.
Look, he drove sensationally well all weekend, to get past Sainz, to lead the race like he did. I think he probably would have held Lewis up if the rain didn't show up. But hey, it's motorsport, and that's what happens as a kid. It's a bit like Tommy T not wanting George Russell to score points. It's like, do you know how much I don't give a shit how much Lando binned it last night and stuff like that? I could not care less. It put me to sleep better knowing that he didn't beat Daniel Ricciardo. And it's not because I don't. It's not because I don't like him. It's not because I'm saying he's driving well. I just don't care. Like, good on you. And he carried on like a muppet. He's telling his engineers to shut up. Yeah, you can only do that for Kimi Räikkönen. His little British shut up's a bit childish. And he almost broke him down into tears afterwards. Toughen up, mate. It's just a car race. Bloody hell.
What?
You were the one. And then he tried to blame it on his team.
What do you think, Tommy
to
T?
do with that. Yeah, his team had nothing to do with that. They said, like, mate, you've got to come in. He was like, no, we're not doing it. And to be honest, hard spot that call. You're leading a race. You do not want to be the one making that decision. Because in hindsight, if he had have pitted, Hamilton could just follow him and probably do the same thing and then still have a crack at passing him. Or he could have just stayed out. So at the time when it's just spitting, you don't know that the downpour was coming like it was.
No.
I probably would have made the same decision, to be honest. Like, I'm leading the race. I'm net positive. If I can just hang on for these last couple of laps, I think most people would have done that leading a race. I think it's pretty hard. We saw Hamilton end up on the grid by himself for a similar situation. The
Yeah.
pressure to make that call from the very start from the very front is very, very hard.
Yeah.
And but he's got to wear it. Like, end of the day, he made the call against what the team kind of recommending. So I don't think he can kind of turn around and blame them, to be honest.
No, and look, even Paul di Resta, and Munnis is going to be stoked that I'm even mentioning Paul di Resta here, but Paul di Resta said it very well in that, you know, your head's in the helmet. Obviously, it's in the cockpit. That's all you've got. But the team has heaps of people who has access to all of the data, who can see the rain and everything else that's going on. And really, you should be able to trust in what they're saying. Now, the difference is when Lando said no in the way that he said it to his poor race engineer, who was probably
Which
like,
is F off.
okay, have fun out there, you're going to crash. Next minute, 30 seconds later, and he crashed. But Hamilton followed him, and Hamilton even said in the press ring afterwards with Lando sort of next to him, they had this weird little interchange that he said, yeah, you know, I saw you staying out, so I stayed out with you. And the team tried to call me in. We saw the mechanics go into the pit lane, didn't we, for Mercedes as well as for McLaren to try and cover this off. But both of them stayed out. Hamilton just ignored Bono. And Bono around the track basically went, now, it's pretty cute that you're a world champion, seven-time world champion, and it's great that you're about to win 100 races probably. But can you just come into the box, please, mate? Because we probably know what we're talking about here. So he had a lap of going, okay, whatever, and then came in, listened, and then, you know, we obviously saw how that played out. I mean, he wasn't that far behind Lando when he came out of the pits on those inters, only a couple of corners, and he managed to gobble them up pretty quickly with that error that Lando made. So, you know, is this a maturity thing, Campy? I think 100% it is. It's just he hasn't had this experience of this pressure, and he thinks he's maybe going to be a bit of a hero by making a Brad Binder, which is a MotoGP reference for Austria this year, kind of call to try and win the race, even though that was the wrong decision.
Yeah, look, I just immaturity. I don't know. I just think it's experience. You know, he should be more experienced to rely on the team. I mean, Lewis did it once, but he thought better of it the second time. I mean, you can deny it once with a bit of gap, but yeah, I think Lando will learn from it. I think next time that he goes to make his own decision, that the team knows better than me sometimes. In saying that, we applaud drivers when they go against their team and they get it right at times. I think too, what was that race last year where we saw the intermediates or the hards turn into slick tyres by the end of the race just because of the where we were. I can't remember which race it was, but you know, I mean, Stroll pitted when he probably shouldn't have, and Lewis Hamilton went on to win that race. We've never seen those tyres. I was like, this is crazy. Anyway, we applaud them when they get it right, and we laugh at them when they get it wrong. But
Like
hopefully next time, for my sake anyway, next time the team says tell Lando to do something, it's wrong. I mean, he's in a third mind next time that situation comes up. Well, the team was wrong last time. I was wrong the first time. Geez, it's 50-50 here. I've got to get it right. And he goes for himself and he's wrong here, you know. But, look, it's motorsport. What a cracking race.
Oh, it was Jeopardy.
I remember with about 7 laps to go, I just remember saying to myself, Lewis Hamilton is going to get at least one chance to pass Lando, and he's going to do it. And boy, was I wrong about, you know, as soon as Russell came on and said, rain in turn 5, I was just like, oh, here we go. And I just, that's why we love this sport sometimes. It just, weather throws up this. Yes, I didn't think it was going to happen, you know. We talk about rain all the time, and 99% of the time it never comes.
Yeah.
Or this whole race we're talking about rain, it's almost here. It's not going to get it.
Yep.
I was shocked that it came, and when it came down as it did, I was like, how good is this sport?
And it's exactly the right amount. You want mixed conditions that it's like, okay, there's jeopardy of which tyre choice do you go with, and then for it to change significantly so quickly in like a lap. For Lando, it changed in a lap that it went from no spray to a lot of spray. And it throws everything on its head again. As you say, that's why we love it.
You know what I was worried about the most?
Go on.
I was worried about someone binning it, red flagging the session, and Lando still gets the win because of the last lap that was classified. He was in
Yeah.
front. Oh, it's just so I can see it happening now. Oh, come on. My heart was in my mouth until.
I reckon I've softened. I was hoping, like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I hope it does kind of get yellow flag or something, and they're just behind a safety car or something. Can get it, but it wasn't to be. I wonder if this actually be good for him long term in his career to have these kind of so close moments to make it. So we saw Daniel when he was earlier. He was so close so often, and then those wins that he finally got, or something like what happened in Monaco, and then finally in Monaco, how special that was.
Yes.
Things like that, I think is going to actually help Lando in his long-term career rather than just it coming super easy to him and then just taking it for granted. So we'll
Still,
see. He
still
had a
doesn't want to
rip
race. Yeah, he did. Still doesn't want to race. He put it on pole in mixed conditions. Do it in the dry, and I might give you a little salute when you're actually straight up against everyone else. You're still not that good in my books.
Love it.
Well, look, McLaren were, and we'll talk about this in our team-by-team analysis, but McLaren were a far shot away from the amazingness that they brought to Monza as a team as a whole, including pit stops and strategy and everything else, but we will get to it.
Can I just say, I think strategy-wise, I think what we saw normally we're seeing the fastest cars get out the front and they're able to build a gap to the cars behind them so that they can pit whenever they want, and they're not being held up by the rest of the field. I think this race, people are going to look over time and time again throughout this year to get an understanding for next year if we're not having cars, we're having cars fairly close on the racetrack. I mean, this was a nightmare for the fronts to pit and then come out, lose traction behind everybody else. It's almost a bit more like IndyCar in that sense. They're hesitant to pit all the time when they come back out in traffic. They have to get the moves done on track, which I think F1's not set up like that. We can't pass on every track that we go. It's really difficult sometimes. So I think next year, a lot of times we'll be studying this race and trying to figure out moving forward the best way to approach some of these races where not necessarily the fastest car on the grid is up front and holding everyone else up.
fastest grid on the car for sure.
Fastest grid on the car, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Sorry about the headache. I'm slowly rambling a bit.
Let's talk about the junior formulas, Tommy, properly, because it was a good time for Australians. 2 out of 3, not bad.
We've got to confess, I didn't watch Jack Doohan's win, but
he still won though.
From pole. Bloody good. Good on him. But I did watch Oscar's race, and he was outstanding from the start. He was comprehensive in that. He came back through after his pit stop. He was on the winning strategy, which was like super soft to, I suppose, their version of hard, basically, is what they call them. But he was spot on, wasn't he? He was coming through the field, just picking apart everyone in front of him, and then just managing from the front, like so mature, like unbelievably mature. And he's walking away from the championship at the moment. There's only 2 rounds left.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's Jeddah and Yas Queen.
Yas Madina.
Cut that out. Use that as a drop. Thank you, James.
Because he doesn't even know the reference as to what we're doing. He's just gone off in his own little
He'd be mortified, wouldn't he?
What's the reference? Oh, no. I fucked it up. Oh, no.
Yes.
Back to Oscar.
But he's really making his case now for that last year. We still don't think it'll happen, but it's been absolutely pantsing Joe for this last half of the season. He had like a bad race at the start of the year, his first round, and that was it. Other than that, he's been in the points consistently, qualifying really well, and the only points back, like we mentioned yesterday, is in races where the grid's reversed. So I'd be looking at how young he is and just going, that's the guy I want in my car.
I said last night on the Discord, I don't remember a race other than Baku where Joe's looked any good.
Yeah.
He's always been behind and fought. Baku, he pulled a hand and he gapped Piastri by 7 or 8 seconds, back face to face on track, Piastri behind him. But that's the only time he's looked good all year. And I just think he doesn't warrant an F1 drive. Not after, 3 seasons in F2 or 2 seasons now. 3, I think. Anyway, when you're getting spanked by a rookie. I mean, the other one with their shout-out's Theo Pourchaire as well. I mean, he's trying exceptionally for
Which
a rookie.
they had the battle for
And
the championship in F3
Chip
didn't
last year, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Pourchaire is probably, in my mind, ahead of Guangzhou getting a seat in F1, but who knows?
But he's also part of the Sauber Junior Driver Academy, so that makes
Yeah.
for him,
Yeah.
you know. But he's not quite ready yet. I don't think they're ready to make that jump. Look, it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? There is now 36 points separating Joe and Piastri, and as we've just all three of us now saying, there is no way in my mind that the Jeddah and Yacht Queen Marina Island, there you go, Campy, there's a sneak of a reference, that he can do anything, because Oscar has this just cool, calm, collected ability to drive this car with no distractions.
Yep.
And I haven't seen, someone drive in F2 like this for a very long time. Do you know what I mean? Like, others have been good, and of course, Russell and Leclerc and everyone else have been good, but Oscar's got this style of this almost nonchalantly gets through and absolutely smashes out of the park each weekend. Look, 2 rounds to go. Piastri on for a victory, and of course, with only 1 seat left in Alfa Romeo, geez, Fred Vasseur's got a lot to think about, because, there's potential. Obviously, Mark Webber is Oscar Piastri's manager, so there's potential for Mark to find some sponsorship too. If it's money is the thing, maybe that's what happens. We come down to it, and Oscar can bring his HP Tuners Melbourne-based company all the way to the big leagues on the side of Alfa Romeo. Hey, that would be a good vibe. All right, boys. Well, let's talk about all of the teams, shall we? In our team-by-team analysis, as we always do, we'll start at the very back with Haas. And Mickey Schumacher did unfortunately not have a good weekend at all. He ended up with a DNF, and Mazepin in 18th. Boys, did you see much of what was going on with them on track? Because I didn't.
Or nothing.
Well,
Anything at all.
The thing that summed it up for me was qualifying. Mazepin was about 5 seconds behind Schumacher in the wet. And I thought that says it absolutely all it needs to say about Mazepin in the sport.
And all the build-up for his home race, and as Crofty actually pointed out quite well, 1,000 kilometres away from his actual home, was where he was supposed to be doing well, because he has in the past been okay at this track. He couldn't put it together whatsoever, and Schumacher, even though DNF'd, I still think had a better weekend. So
yeah, well, and because everyone just likes him and likes when his race engineer gets on the radio, because we're like, oh, can we just hear more audio, please? Please continue to talk. I'm falling asleep to the sound of how amazing you are. Should get him on a podcast, just so we can just encourage him to talk and just.
We can do one of those go to sleep episodes, and you just put it on if you're having trouble falling asleep.
Someone said to me the other day they put on the podcast to go to sleep. I was like, not sure how I feel about you sleeping to Campy's voice and everything. I
suppose it is white noise. Let's be honest.
You to the fucking Muppets.
That is the third time. That's the third. We've only got 30 more times in this one podcast. But yeah, for Haas, as we say each weekend, now it's all about 2022. As we said in the pre-drinks podcast, both of these drivers are now confirmed, which is a thing, I guess. It's neither here nor there, really, for this team. Until William Story takes it over and turns it into
Rich energy.
Rich Haas energy.
Rich Haas. Yeah, I like that.
Potentially created a monster. AlphaTauri. This was not a good weekend for either of them. I think Tsunoda, as we know, has been re-signed and was confused at that decision because he's crashed a lot. He came in 17th, and Pierre Gasly in 13th. Also just didn't have a good race. And I think for these guys, this is where the part of the pack that really suffered the most, Campy, with not being able to get past, tyre degradation, trying different pit stop strategies, and just being caught up with overtaking traffic from the leaders. But for Gasly, this is a very rare performance for him, starting and then finishing so low.
Yeah, look, he's compromised by qualifying, really, on this track. I mean, he was close. He was within 10 seconds of where he wanted to be, but was in the way that probably shouldn't have been where he was compared to how quick he was in qualifying. But things happen in the wet and mixed conditions. That's what happened. Yuki Tsunoda, for me, why on earth would you give that guy another year? Mm-hmm. He performed really well in round one. We thought, oh, geez, this kid might be good. No, Absolute
No.
rubbish.
No consistency whatsoever. In
Oh,
a far better car than what the Haas guys are driving.
Ugh.
So yeah,
Red Bull, I'll tell you what, at the top they're good. They got Maximus Verstappen. Perez is a good C driver. I thought I'd elevate
C?
him last year, but he's a B grade, C grade driver. I'll tell you what, Yuki Tsunoda is probably one of the worst drivers we've seen in Formula One so far. I think he's having a worse year than Mazepin. Get
Yeah.
rid of him. It's a shame. They've ruined another career. We don't want to see it, but hey, suck it up, move on. And
Yeah, but I mean, as you say, like it's different, right? Because you've got Gasly who's consistently putting it in sixth, and in the points, and that's good for
but this
AlphaTauri.
dude's getting knocked out of Q1.
Exactly, Tsunoda's nowhere near. So the difference between Mazepin and him is that Mazepin's in a terrible car, and spinning around doing whatever. But we don't know what he would be like if he was in a car that is competitive like that. Tsunoda has shown, a little bit of spark to begin with, maybe while everyone else was sorting themselves out for the car.
After he had 2 weeks of testing at that track.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now it's nowhere to be seen. And we've got people, like Armstrong and Schwartzman and Piastri and others who I think are more talented who are not able to get into a seat because of this situation with Honda and whatnot. That is just difficult to stomach. And I know Red Bull fold is interesting, but put the Kiwi in. Put Marcus in. Like, I genuinely think, Campy, don't you, that he would have a better time in that seat next year?
Hey, why don't they last 5 races go, right, we're going to throw it up to our juniors. And you get 1 race weekend each. And if you don't, if you perform, you'll get a drive next year. It'd be great for us, the fans, because, there's a new something to talk about every week. And, they really get to put every single one of their juniors in pole position to get the drive for next year, but they won't do it because
well, they've made the decision, so they don't need to, right? But actually, that's not a bad idea. That's Campy when he's the future director of driver talent for Red Bull.
Yeah.
For his
I'm not saying it's the right way to go about it, but at least I would be honest enough to come out and say, yeah, look, that probably wasn't the most well thought through decision, but hey, it was good for the fans, so suck it up and move on. Well, no one's perfect. These pricks are all about covering their ass and their public image and making sure they look good to the rest of the world. Give me a break. Get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting, and for the whole decision around Tsunoda for next year is interesting because this year made sense because of the Honda deal. Got it, understood. There must be something else in terms of Honda's involvement in Red Bull engines next year that we don't know about yet that is consistent around that kind of decision making.
Well, there is some movements on that. Sorry. No, I don't think Honda will be part of the sport. I think that Red Bull engine technology will actually partner with someone from the Volkswagen group, so the Porsche or Audi, and that will be the next manufacturer that we get into the sport. There was a meeting that was had. There was a meeting that was had a couple of weeks ago. Because they're trying to get the problem with F1 is they're trying to get a couple more or one more manufacturer onto the grid, right? To disperse the load off Mercedes and who they're supplying engines to. The problem they're having is that in the new Concord agreement they brought in last year, they capped it at a $300 million entry fee to get into the sport, which made it near impossible because the existing teams were trying to cover their asses and cover the profits and the revenue sharing agreement that they had for the next 5 years. Now, what they've decided to do after 25 and 26 is actually remove the MGUH out component of the engine, which is where they spend all the time and all the money, and that's the highest developed technological part on the car. They're getting rid of the MGUH, so it's going to be easier for another manufacturer to step in after this Concord agreement we signed last year comes into play in 25, 26, which opens the door for Red Bull to partner with one of these organisations. I think it'll probably be Porsche because of what they've done in the Le Mans 24-hour and World Endurance Championship over the last few years. And it's the only logical step for that Volkswagen group to get into F1.
Yeah, and it brings across Mark Webber, who, as we know, works at Porsche and does significant work for them. They'd bring a brains trust of an interesting situation for that to see, and we would love to see it, absolutely. And then Tommy T's car would finally have some Formula One pedigree, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
No.
can I explain that right? Does everyone sort of follow the chain of thought there?
No, exactly. And I think so. It's been mentioned as well that Lance Stroll's been pretty public talking about how it's going to work, and he sees it a bit more like American sport with the new media deals which they're drawing up, where a team will be just increasing in value, but there's only a finite amount of teams. So just say Williams want to sell, it'll actually have a far greater value one day to sell to one of the manufacturers because there is only 10 teams and it's a finite thing. Whereas at the moment, a new team can enter willy-nilly, whereas if you can come in, buy an existing team and take it over, there's real value. And these new media deals we'll see coming forward with Liberty doing way more and the American market opening up, you'll see so much more money in from the media side of things that these billionaires will want to own Formula One teams, not just as a toy, but as an actual profitable machine, which is what Big Daddy Stroll has seen so far. And the only reason he's getting Aston to the place he wants it, because he's like, I want the cool one that looks like this and does that, because when this happens, I'm in prime position to just be making money.
Yeah.
So
Very well
that's
said,
another factor.
both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Aston Martin, shall we? Because Seb Vettel 12th, Lance Stroll 11th. They had a bloody collection almost of each other in the last couple of laps in the race. Campy, thoughts on Aston for this weekend?
Look, I thought Stroll's start was epic. I thought we were going to see one
in how
400
many
races.
now? One in a year races now this weekend. Great start. I mean, he held up Danny Rick behind. Who was he? He was behind Russell at the start too. So, yeah. Look, I think he would be pretty happy with his first stint and where the car was, but they pitted way too early. I think they were trying to make that two-stop work because of the way that the race was panning out, getting stuck behind Russell and Carlos and Lando up front. So Stroll will be a bit frustrated. I think he raced Vettel way too hard. They made contact and they got away with it. I think Seb would have been pretty shitty,
Yeah.
if I'm honest, about that whole sequence of events. But Seb would have been frustrated with the weekend as well because he's qualifying in 11th place. So I think he started 10th in the end because of Bottas taking that grid penalty. Yeah, look, I just think Seb, again, they're not cutting it. They're not where they should be and where that team was this time last year. They were consistently fighting for podiums and if not wins. And for them to stuff it up this year on track so badly, I mean, Seb's had some good results, but
This is what happens when you copy the homework from the wrong test.
Yeah.
And now they're stuck with it.
Yeah,
Just
they
copy.
changed the
can't
questions
develop.
and answers halfway through
That's
the
it.
test. And
Yeah,
Should
and they
copy
can't
Red
develop
Bull
this
and been
current.
perfect.
Exactly. Then they can't continue to develop on something that they didn't start. Do you know what I mean? They don't understand it enough to kind of continue with that thinking. So I think they're just stuck until next year. Maybe they're just consolidating now and they're just going to focus on new regs. I don't think they've got much more to play for because they are slipping drastically back through those the constructors standing. Sorry. They're not really close to the AlphaTauri and Alpine kind of fight for that other position. So they might as well they will handily beat Alpha Williams and Haas. So they've got nothing left to play for as far as you know what I mean.
For these guys, though, I think you're right, Tommy. They're so focused on next year. I mean, Lance Stroll, Daddy Stroll has just announced the Aston Martin campus. He's even changed the name. It's not even just the factory. It's now a campus where learned people come to spend their money. There you go. But
Carlos.
they're calling it the Carlos Renault campus. But the investment clearly not in this year. Couldn't care less. Not interested. Let's put the Bond livery on a car and let's get Daniel Craig in the campus, and that's fine and that's cool. But these guys have the cash clearly and the backing. Talking about the team's structure and Doralton Capital and this the takeover of what was Racing Point, now Aston Martin, are the two very recent examples of external firms coming in and making a significant investment and difference to how the future looks. I mean, absolutely, Racing Point was great to see some, really great results for them and for Sergio Perez and for Lance Stroll for pole positions last year. But for this year, obviously the car's totally different because of the rule changes. They couldn't copy Mercedes as much as they had done. So, as you say, put it in the bin for the rest of it, focus on building the campus,
Yep.
go around saying Carlos a lot and Renault, and then just focus on next year, because you
Yep.
would honestly, at their position right now, it would be ridiculous to be investing any more into this year.
For
It
sure.
would be a waste, absolute
And-
waste. You should be spending
as we're
every
about
dollar
to-
on next year.
And as we're about to talk about Williams as well, in the same token, I think these two teams, with their recent investment, with kind of where they're positioned, are looking good going into new regs, like we've seen so many manufacturers do. Like, look at when Red Bull came into the hybrid era and they just like shot, like
Mhm.
crazily. And like Seb at the end of his era, kind of there, or Lewis in this era, we see a lot of these teams just kind of seemingly come out of nowhere in new regs. I think these two would be ones to watch because of the way they're positioned with financial backing, with kind of how they're set up with new kind of ideas, and they're not kind of set in their ways. And we've been dominant as we'll continue dominant, just assuming you will. I think these two have the right attitudes going into the future with completely new regulations. So be very interested to see it. And we've already started to see it from Williams just with how they've been operating this season.
And can I just say too, cost caps. I thought it was going to be much easier for these teams that didn't spend a lot on going racing. It was going to be a lot easier for them to make up performance on track as opposed to the big teams, because how much they spent and how much their investment was to get pace on track. I must have been significantly out on my assessment of how much these teams actually spent to go racing every year. If they'd been able to adapt and change their whole philosophy on money for the teams, and they still haven't really changed a lot on the surface. So,
Yeah.
Maybe the cost cap thing's a whole lot of bullshit. We just don't really know. Maybe the top end of teams are only spending that 150 anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and we will see next year, won't we? Really, I mean, because this is more of a difficult time, wasn't it, to try and find these cost cap, budget cap things, because the car's fairly similar to last year, so
Yeah.
you really have to spend that much. Well, let's talk about Williams, boys, because it was unfortunate Latifi didn't end up finishing. Something went wrong. I didn't end up seeing what actually happened to him, but Russell in 10th, which is annoying for you, Tommy T, is 1 point away, one place away rather from the points. But he held up everyone. I mean, look, fair play in a much slower car, still defending from the likes of Danny Rick and Lance Stroll, who were in faster cars. So fair play, George. But can you just get out of the way, mate? You have no place being that far up the grid, and you're ruining Daniel's race. That's all I could think about. Get out of it. Wait till next year, where you're going to be in the mid pack anyway with Mercedes.
He's a good qualifier, isn't he? He's got it together. He's
Well,
really good
Williams
over
is
one
setting
lap.
up
Lucky.
that car.
He's
Williams is
lucky.
setting that car up for quali, aren't they?
Full credit. He is lucky, I think, Campy, but also like that was a ripping lap to get into third. He took the risk. He did the right things to get that
he did.
opportunity, to get more opportunity on the soft. So you've got to give him that credit, but that car is useless over a race distance.
Oh,
Yep.
Bloody hell.
Compared,
The only thing it's got going for it is that it is very aerodynamic and slippery on the straights in that respect. It's not
Well,
high
they-
downforce.
They set it
just
up so
flies
it's
on
very
those-
simple.
But you know what I mean? It's slippery in comparison. It should be on the
And it's powered by
on the
Merck.
grid.
You know, he
And
had
that's it.
It was
Yeah.
him, Lance Stroll, powered by Merck, Daniel Ricciardo, powered by Merck in a row. There was no
And
wonder
Hamilton.
that no one was getting and Hamilton like powered by Merck. You know, and then I think there was Perez behind. It was the first non-Merck powered car. You know, it's a good advert for Mercedes engines, I suppose. As much as Lewis Hamilton did an ad at the very end saying, "So great to see my former team McLaren powered by Mercedes." It's like, all right, mate. All right, we get it. No, it's all right.
He's
but
done the
Latifi-
media for long enough.
Yeah, you know,
He
right.
does,
That's
isn't
great. You know what? I genuinely really
Respect
like
for that
Lewis
one. That was a
Hamilton.
good one.
I really like Lewis Hamilton, and it's really annoying me. Latifi, yeah, look, he's showing great promise, isn't he, Campy? And as we've said just before, with Doralton Capital at the wheel now and steering ahead of 2022, we've got the nicest grid on the team with Alex Albon and with Latifi rather for next year. What can we really expect from him in the last couple of races? Because I mean, he is now showing pace that he can potentially out-qualify George.
Well, he was hands down going to out-qualify George this weekend. Unfortunately for him, look what happened. You know, they retired his car after in Q2. He didn't
Yep.
set it. They just wanted to ensure that he started Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen. In saying that, I mean, I think what we can see from him for the rest of the year, I just think I just think, don't worry about races. I mean, they're not racing for points every weekend. If he gets a couple here and there, great for him. I don't think he will. I think he needs to out-qualify Russell at least 50-50 from now to the rest of the year. So how many races left? 7?
Yep.
So he'd be targeting 4 qualifying wins. And that'll just mean he's just making that step to where he needs to get to. Russell's formidable in qualifying, but I think he'll be able to lead that team and hand in hand with Albon next year. I think they've got a pretty. Again, we don't know. They've got a pretty good lineup. Again, we don't know a lot about Russell. I mean, he looks like he's good, but Latifi's been pretty good this year in comparison. I know he hasn't out-qualified him as much, but he's close and he's getting closer. He's nipping at those heels. The gap's come down from 5 tenths to 3 tenths to now. It's pretty consistently within a tenth and a half, which is passable and comparable for F1 drivers up against their teammates these days. Any more than that tenth and a half, you start to go, oh shit, where am I today? So I know he's killing it.
Yeah, I'm happy to see it, and I'm really looking forward to next year. Like I really am for that Williams team. New regs, lots of investment, both of them good drivers in their own right. No, dodgy pay driver in sight. I'm here for it. I'm ready to get back on the Williams train. Like McLaren, they're ready. They're primed to be that kind of next McLaren in that journey. Alfa Romeo, did anybody at any point in the broadcast mention that Kimi Raikkonen, A, wasn't suffering from long COVID, B, was in the points in an Alfa Romeo, for goodness sake? He came 8th, Giovinazzi 16th. Gio's gone, sorry. Italian Jesus is fantastic, but that's it for him. Performance haven't been there with a guy who's retiring, finishing in 8th. Campy, all hail Kimi or not?
Oh, I love Kimi. You know what? Comes back, gets asked some questions on Thursday. You know his response was, I just want to do my job. Leave me alone.
He's amazing.
His Instagram story whilst leaving Russia was, went to Russia, got points too. That's it. That's amazing. The whole story. Is it a photo of a plane or something?
Oh, he's a great performer. Great media performer.
But we just we didn't see or hear anything yet again in the broadcast about him. And maybe, television director who works at Formula One, and yes, they're not, Sky Sports F1 doesn't have control over what the broadcast shows, but you certainly have control over what you talk about, Paul di Resta. And it's unfortunate that a guy who is great at the sport is the last Ferrari world champion. Can we just remember, please?
Yep.
No one's talking about him. He had COVID. Kubica came in for 2 weekends and did a mega job. Hardly spoke about him either. It's just getting worse. It kills me. And Sauber, Alfa Romeo, we are watching them closely because of what Giovinazzi is going to be doing next year if he's driving or not, or moving to reserve capacity, and what Bottas has got to look forward to. And he's an Australian, much like our favourite, I don't know, Russell Crowe. He's adopted as an Australian, so we want him to do well.
Russell Crowe's a Kiwi, isn't he?
I know, but we adopted him as an Australian, is my point. Much like VB. But yeah, for Kimi, fantastic result. Very, very glad for him. Hopefully for the next 7 races, if we get all 7, he can put that Alfa in the points. I think that's a good way to see out his amazing double F1 career. Alpine, Fernando Alonso.
Bloody hell.
And just stop it with your bad self, because you're just making me too excited. 6th position in that car. Esteban Ocon, 15th. So, like Alfa Romeo, the old dog doing it to them, and the young guy maybe not so much. But Tommy T, talk to me about your thoughts on Alonso.
I haven't heard anything about what he did with the car, but he premeditated that, didn't he? I'm not wrong in thinking that.
Apparently he did it in one of his outlets.
Yeah. He premeditated how quick can I get through this polystyrene bloody cone thing. And just whip through, because he gained about 3 places. He just had no desire. He's like, lap 1, they're not going to call it, are they? Bloody, call it. Dare you to call me for something on lap 1. He's like, I was avoiding contact. What are you going to do about it? He's like, ignored that chicane completely. I mean, full credit to him. Like, that's a bloody good loophole if he's found one.
That is such an Alonso thing to do, and I'm here for it. Kevy?
Carlos tried the exact same thing last year.
Didn't have a good
still had how that turned out.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, yeah, Alonso. He's hilarious, isn't he?
I love it.
And
he
the
was
press conferences
bloody
too,
outstanding.
he's so good as well. Yeah, well, look, we love seeing him drive. Obviously, we love that he's in Alpine next year. You know, I think really they should get rid of Ocon and put Piastri in that seat next to Alonso. Could you imagine that pairing of Piastri and Alonso? The young Oscar Piastri learning all of the mischief that would come from Fernando Alonso. I mean, talk about a career Kickstarter. That would be it. Esteban Ocon in 15th. He had some pace at some point during the race. I think he was just caught out when he went to Inters and everyone else did at the same
cut and
time.
paste that for his every race.
Yeah, I mean, everything except for Hungary. And he only won Hungary because, again, it was just slightly wet and no DRS and no one could get past, or Seb couldn't get past.
Williams held up the whole. Well, it was Latifi that held up the whole back for him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Both the Williams both did that, didn't they? Just created DRS
Unless they're both
trains.
consistent, I guess.
I'm starting to hate Williams again.
That didn't take long. Send the marker. It's only 4 minutes. Okay, well, yes, Alpine, Fernando Alonso here for it. Fantastic result for him. 6th position. Good points haul for them in their fight, inevitably, with Ferrari. So if they can continue to perform like that, you know, we just need to see Ocon getting the points for them to be able to pick that 5th place
What do you reckon,
potentially
before we
4th.
move on from Alpine, what do you reckon about Oscar getting a test drive and coming in P1 and outdoing Ocon's times? I reckon we
have to
could
do it.
definitely see that.
The problem is, in order for that to be able to happen, Alonso would have to give up his seat for
He
Piastri
would.
to do that. I don't know if he would, to be honest.
He's
because
P1s. He
just
doesn't care about
loves-
tests.
He just loves driving a Formula One car, I think, now. Well, maybe you're right. I don't know.
He
He
gave up
loves
for Joe
Joe.
earlier in the season, yeah.
Yeah, well, look, I think you're right. It will be interesting to see. I mean, you're always going to praise, aren't you, the junior driver more if they do 2/10 off. I think that's probably the margin, isn't it, Campy, where we're talking in terms of that kind of raw pace, and those extra 2/10 are often the hardest to find in a Formula One car. We know though that he's already tested the Renault, the RS18, I think.
Yeah. He
this
got half a
year.
day in it.
Yep. So he knows what a Formula One car is like. He even said, you know, the gap between, or the jump rather, between Formula 3 and Formula 2 is a little bit. Like, it's not that much you can get into the car, and obviously, as he's doing now, drive it very quickly. But the gap from F2 to F1 is like this, you know, Grand Canyon size of learning and ability and all the buttons on the steering wheel and modes and stuff. So, look, if he gets a test in Abu Dhabi at the end of the year, which I still think they're testing there, it might be interesting to see how he does. But certainly, if he wins this F2 championship, then they're going to have to put him somewhere. Alpine, you know, it's all on them to do something.
It'd be crazy
good
to
with him.
lose him, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, they're going to have to send him somewhere good. Let's talk about McLaren. As I said, Daniel Ricciardo's pit stop, you know, it was like 8.5 seconds. No good at all. It was a team mistake. We have to talk about the changes to the regulations to this pit stops now, don't we? Because the issue is there was an automatic sensor in the wheel gun that once the nut was done up tight enough, the green light would automatically go, so that the release guy could put the light on and the car would go away. Now they've changed, and we saw this with Red Bull last weekend, didn't we? Or Monza rather, that they changed to you have to physically press the button. So you've got to see the sensor on the wheel gun that it's tight enough, and then you've got to press the button as the wheel gun mechanic. And the jack man standing at the front then waits for that thumbs up to then release it. If you look back at this footage, all of the wheels are on in about 2.5 seconds, as they are on average with McLaren. There was nothing wrong. There was no, second have a crack at a wheel because something happened. It was literally the sensor and the jack man not dropping the car down in front. That's it. That's what ruined Daniel Ricciardo's third position for this weekend, as far as I'm concerned.
Compromised his whole race in one pit stop. And the look, I get it. These things happen in motorsport at times. It just frustrates me when Norris was driving so well, was on for the win. Danny Rick, didn't really get a chance to show what he could do pace-wise because he's stuck behind this DRS train, burning out his tyres. Then he gets into some clean air where his tyres are well past where they should be, and he's been managing them the best he can for the better part of 20 laps. And then he, then has Hamilton right up his ass for, 7 or 8. And then for that to happen, he was supposed to come out in front of Sainz and behind Gasly, and he would have hunted Gasly down on those new set of hards and passed him, and then come out where he should have come out. So it's just frustrating. He came out behind Ocon, and then it cost. On track time, it probably cost. What was he? 10 odd seconds behind Sainz behind Lando when he pitted, but he came when when push came to shove, and it was him and Sainz going toe to toe, he was 30 seconds behind Lando. It was just like, you can't make that time up, not in that category, and not trying to pass that amount of traffic. So, geez, it hurt, but good. I mean, good for him to come fourth. He did slip back to ninth at one stage. He got passed by, I believe, Perez, and then Verstappen got past him, and so did Charles Leclerc, and he dropped back to ninth at one stage. Now, I didn't see it on the track. I'm not really too sure why. But the other interesting thing for me was when Max Verstappen pitted, and just as he's leaving the box, Daniel was entering his box right in front of him. So just say it was a 3 second, just say it was a 3 second gap to them. I don't know how he lost so much time to Max Verstappen on that out lap and ensuing laps.
Traffic.
Was it traffic? Because
Traffic,
Max had to pass it too. Or
Traffic.
did Max just get it in better?
Correct.
Max
Yeah,
just
you
had
know-
some free, yeah.
And Russia, when there's traffic in the way on certain corners, it's just difficult to get
You're
past. I
done.
just think Max had it
Yeah.
where, on the main straights.
So
rather
it's a
than-
bit like qualifying where he just encountered that traffic trying to warm up his
Yep.
tyres, in the worst positions and also went. So there you go. It's not Danny
Tough.
Rick's weekend, is it?
No,
But still,
good.
and to come away with fourth, excellent. Probably
Oh,
should have had a
for sure.
podium.
Oh,
He'd be-
for sure.
He was fuming. He wasn't fuming. He was
Disappointed.
He was
knew that he had
disappointed.
more,
Yep.
and it's especially to have a podium off the back of a win, for him as a mental thing as well, and that confidence for the team too. They really could have done with it. They really could have done with Lando winning and Daniel coming in third effectively, because that's what probably could have happened if they hadn't have screwed up the pit stop, and it remained dry. Obviously, that the rain happened and Lando made a mistake, but for McLaren, certainly not the result they wanted. But can I look? Sky
after
Sports,
the.
hang on.
Sorry. Yep.
Sky Sports, just come here for a second. All right. Andreas Seidel is German, and he doesn't really like showing a lot of emotion at the best of times, Natalie Pinkham. So when you start saying things like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Andreas, it was such a hard race for you, wasn't it? Oh, our hearts are just breaking for Lando." What actually do you expect him to say? Because all he's going to say is, "Yeah, well, we're going to think about next week." Like, stop trying to sob story stuff all the time. Pick your bloody audience and pick the guy you're talking to. It's like the pit wall. He's here. He's got a job to do. Can you just
Yeah.
let him do his job? If you want the emotional side,
alone.
talk to Zach. Don't talk to Andreas about it. Know your audience and know your bloody
Talk to
person you're
Gunter,
talking
he's got
to.
nothing to
Sky
do.
Sports.
In
Where
saying
is
that,
Gunter?
in saying that,
Gunter for years.
in saying that, I think Natalie Pinkham was going to hug Lando Norris after that bloody
Oh, they
that
would.
interview. I was like,
Oh,
Natalie,
give me a
is she
break.
like the Paddock's mum or something?
Well, I think she, for the British drivers exclusively, what a surprise. Well, let's talk about Lando then, because as we said at the beginning, it's about,
Ha ha, fucking ha ha ha.
good. I got so many beeps I've got to put
See
in.
that, James?
That's 5 now.
5?
Yep. You're lazy. That's what's happening.
I've got a headache and you're annoying me.
For Lando, though, at the beginning, he was driving superbly. We said this in the pre-drinks podcast. The car was in a good
No, he
enough
was.
position. He hunted down Sainz. He didn't get a great start. Sainz got a fantastic start. He hunted him down, and he passed him at a good time. It was all looking pretty rosy, and he was controlling that pace. When Lewis Hamilton was coming up behind him, the gap was closing a little bit because he was fuel saving. Then when he was given the okay, he built the gap again. So credit to Lando when it was dry.
Yep.
He was controlling that race in exactly the right way. And for McLaren, fantastic at that point. But he needs to listen to his team, and the team need to demand him coming in. I mean, there's only so much you can do, I suppose, isn't there? It was like, please come in the pits. Oh, he hasn't. Oh, well,
He's
come on.
been robbed twice
can we
this
do?
year, hasn't he?
Go get the spike strips. But yeah, it's no good. Otherwise,
Got
though,
his watch stolen, got a race stolen. Not Lando's year.
for McLaren, though, Andreas is going to be really disappointed because they came from Zandvoort, didn't have a good performance.
Oh.
Came to Monza, great performance. Came here to Russia, not a good performance. Maybe if this is the pattern of Turkey in the next race in a couple of weekends' time, will be a good one again. But, I guess it is good to see the ability for these two McLarens to command race pace in both
Yeah.
Monza and this
Yeah.
weekend as necessary. So the Mercedes power unit, Zach and Andreas, definitely the right call, getting away from the
sure.
Renault.
I
Although
think
we don't
it's hard
get
to play
hear
with
say
the
Renault.
result though. isn't it? It's hard to play the result because Lando was so close and faultless until like the last 5 laps. You know what I mean? So I think in any other scenario, they go, you know what, we'll take that. I mean, I suppose Daniel wouldn't have got as far as 4th if he hadn't gone on to Inters when he did. So it's kind of two sides of that coin. But I think with the performance of that car, they're doing everything right. Now it's just coming down to that portion of luck, which Formula One happens to be, unfortunately. So they're doing the right, they're trending the right way. I think the team will be happy with this, regardless of the final result, which is disappointing. But they did everything right all weekend again, and they're just stacking up good weekends. It will net positive, and they will walk away with that, hopefully third in the constructors.
Speaking about third, I was a bit happy for Carlos Sainz getting third in this race because good guy Carlos deserves a bit of good luck and happiness in a Ferrari, I think. He did a great job in qualifying yesterday, much like Russell, though, in terms of right place, right time on the track for the right amount of grip. He knocked it out of the park. At one point, though, he was out of the points, and for him to come back into the points and then get this podium position was fantastic. But Charles Leclerc and the brand new power unit, the tail of this 15% extra, or 15 rather, horsepower extra, in 15th, 15 for 15. Just he stayed out too long, unfortunately, on the slicks, much like Lando. We just didn't see a lot of it because obviously we're focusing in the front of the grid. But for Ferrari this weekend, not a bad result. You know, you obviously want both cars in the points, but I think Lando was lucky. We didn't mention this as well, did we? That he only got a warning for crossing the white line going into the pit lane when he actually entered the pits for Inters. He entered the pit lane, exited the pit lane because it was so slippery and he didn't have the ability to stop. Went on the track, came back in again.
Sorry, how did he not get punished for that?
That
is cut and dry, 10-second or stop go.
Yep.
That is cut and dry penalty every
the
time.
reasoning for that was the lap before there was a certain amount of grip that he expected to go into this corner and it wasn't there. Literally, that's the reason. Don't shout at me. That's just what the FIA said. Or the steward said, sorry.
The double standards. I want
but
consistency.
Just like Hamilton, you know, was at Silverstone that he made that decision and he came in and out and crossed the line, got 10-second penalty because that's the thing. Regardless of if you have control of the car or not, that's the point. You're supposed to. That's why the line exists.
It's a shitty rule. The lap before I made it work. This lap I didn't. I made a mistake and I should be penalised for it.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, we shouldn't be talking about these issues because the FIA and Michael Massey and the race stewards should be getting this stuff right.
Yep.
We want consistency across the board.
Yep.
It's hands down a penalty and he loses his point and we can laugh some more at his expense. It's just, I hate this stuff because they say it's safety. Next time we go, oh no, well, it didn't really do this. It's like, come on, give me a break.
Know what the safety.
You said it yourself. You spoke to a guy that actually sits inside these things and said, oh, there's no outside correspondence. There's none of this. There's none of that. But I mean, these bullshit decisions suggest otherwise. That there's other determining factors into when they make the decision. So
we need to make sure that this is safe and that Daniel Ricciardo's engine doesn't over-rev slightly for half a second. In an idiot lap that didn't count. So just be careful, Campy.
Tommy, 0.01 second. Oh my god.
Pretty sure Campy has that tattooed on him.
Yeah, there's 0.01. Always remember. But the reason I bring it up, though, is because McLaren then both finishing in the points as a result of Norris not getting a penalty, picking up 7th, and making, you know, McLaren pushing further ahead in this fight for third, which they are probably likely to get now on Ferrari. But yeah, for Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz 3rd and 15th. Look, we said, you know, this was going to be the comparison, didn't we, with Max Verstappen alongside Charles at the very back of the grid. And what ended up being Bottas, too, of course, got announced after we put the podcast out that Bottas was taking a new engine for whatever reason, dumb decision, Mercedes, and pushed him all the way back. But Leclerc's this extra power, I didn't really see it coming to fruition, Campy. It wasn't like this magic, you know, silver bullet to their problem, was it?
No, I think we had to take him. We didn't really get to see much of him at the start of the race when it was optimum, really, did we? So,
no. What did you think, Tommy T?
Pretty quick, didn't he? Yeah. Max just flew past him, so that just said it all for me. It was like, if this car was as fast as it was supposed to be, he would have given Max a little bit of trouble. But yeah, obviously didn't get to see much of it, but I don't know, maybe working out some kinks, or maybe it was just paired with the wrong aero package or something for this. Who knows?
Classic Ferrari.
Classic Ferrari.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Red Bull then, because Verstappen in second and Perez in ninth, which is interesting because Perez had at one point a very good run getting through the field, trying to push closer to the podium position, and then he just dropped back again. He's not being the rear gunner that Red Bull need him to be.
No.
But Max Verstappen, 20th to
Yeah.
second. You know, it's better than 20th to third with Valtteri Bottas at Monza. It's one place further. That is a big deal. Max Verstappen, take a bow. Talk about trying to do that damage limitation is what Christian Horner's favourite two words all weekend were. And they couldn't have dreamt for a better result, Tommy T, could they?
No. To be back after this weekend when they were just like, Mercedes are going to walk away with it. We've got two reasons that we're at the back of the grid. Anyway, we were the most back. After everyone else took their penalties, we're still the back, basically. To walk away with second is unbelievable. He mitigated all of that loss to what now 2 points behind Lewis after a win.
Yes.
Which is not what Lewis wants to hear, hey?
No.
That you won that race and he's still on your tail. Like it's quite literally the difference between like fourth and fifth now, in a race result, and you are back in front. So outstanding from Max. We knew he had the potential. We just were unsure of how easy it would have been to pass, but he made it look pretty easy, didn't
he? Yeah, as Max Verstappen does, though, doesn't he?
He does.
Like, in terms of the most confident driver. And Campy, that car looked really, really good under braking. You know, sending late sends into corners and just were like dispatching cars, you know, quicker than anything else.
Yeah, as I said earlier in the podcast, they had a bit of downforce strapped onto the car so that they could use the engine braking and that high downforce to generate the extra, the extra braking force under braking they need to make those passes. Hence why he's able to do so much easier than Perez was. I think completely different car setups, but. I mean, he got lucky, didn't he? But it's the first time I'm going to say it. I haven't said it all year. This is why Red Bull's going to win the Drivers' Championship this year, and Max Verstappen will. They just don't seem to be making the mistakes where Mercedes is. I know Lewis won, he didn't leave any points on the table, but it should never have been like that, really, should it? I mean, Max was really deadlocked behind Danny Rick in about 7th position, and that's probably where the race would have finished. Unfortunately, I mean, he got lucky with the conditions, but this is why they're going to win it, because they're just not making these mistakes off track.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's about 30 points between the between the Constructors' Championship, between Mercedes.
Yeah, I don't think they'll win the Constructors, but they'll win the Drivers.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting time, won't it, for Mercedes to win Constructors and Red Bull to win driver, we just haven't seen that for ages. You know, it's been driver and constructor, driver, constructor for Seb onwards. You know, it's been a bit ridiculous. Okay, Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas, as I said before, he took an engine penalty after qualifying for whatever reason. It felt very dodgy to me, Tommy T. What were they doing to our boy?
Surely not dodgy. That would be a weird way. Sure, I think that's too far, but it is suspect, I guess, when you look at when it happened. I suppose they just don't care now with Bottas. They're like, you're a pawn in our game. You will do as we wish. We will put you where we want. So maybe you're right, but it's pretty nefarious, I think.
It just kind of looked like to me that they were using him as a pawn further down to hold Max up. That's what it looks like to me. Well, we push you further back, then you'd be racing Max sooner. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just...
But he was going to have to race Max anyway, eventually. Do you know what I mean? From wherever he was.
Starting 8th, and he was always going to take points off Verstappen anyway. So
that's what I would have thought. And you would have probably hoped would have had a second if he had not started back there. Like, they could have had a 1-2. Like, in
Bottas has gone through about 17 engines, though, at this point. This is the problem for power unit. That's why I don't understand. Like, he's taken another one so soon.
Yeah,
Look, you look at this after Q2. 5 tenths in front of Hamilton after Q2. It's wet. He's looking like he's going to walk onto a pole position again 2 weeks in a row after Monza. And then what happens in Q3? You know, he's comparable with Hamilton to get to Bank Arena. He's in half a tenth a second of him. They're looking like, Mercedes looking like, pole is in the bag here, 1-2, stream away for the weekend. And then Lewis has a little mishap, and his whole week
Yeah.
Gets held up in the pits, doesn't get to warm up his new tyres, doesn't get a real shot at Q1, setting his best time, then grid penalty, and then, geez, pass by Verstappen. And, mate, you got to feel for the guy, don't you?
Yeah.
Mercedes have done absolutely nothing for him,
No,
particularly this year. I don't. Yeah.
man is an island in that Mercedes vehicle, isn't he? He's just
Yeah,
by
poor bloke.
himself.
But let's talk about Hamilton, though, because this is very impressive. 100 race victories is a lot of race victories. And after watching the Michael Schumacher documentary, I think I'm maybe now starting to think that Lewis Hamilton is actually more of the GOAT than Michael is. And because it's just ridiculous. Obviously, he's had a strong team. He's had a strong car. But as I said earlier in the podcast, I'm actually really starting to like Lewis again. Something's happened this year. And maybe it's the competition from Max, genuinely, because he has been more real out of the car. In his press conferences, he's been genuine every single time. When something hasn't gone his way, he hasn't just thrown the toys out of the cot like he's done in previous years. There's been genuine admiration for Lewis. For the Max rivalry that's been going on. It's just an observation. I think he deserves a look in for the GOAT. For 100 victories is a mega job,
so.
Tommy T.
He is for me. I'm obviously of that young generation. I think obviously, and Campy will hate this, that LeBron is the GOAT, and it's not Michael. Which the Michaels are just overrated in both sports. To be honest, let's be honest. But I think he's.
I've just clued on
better
what
get
you were talking about. Jordan.
Keep on about to swear again, all right? I'll let Tommy finish and then I'll go for it.
I'll get my pen out.
I love this. I'm ready. Okay.
Lucky we're not monetized already. Otherwise, we'd be delisted immediately.
That's it.
Yeah.
No,
I
think
go on.
Hamilton is making a great case for the greatest this sport's ever seen. Obviously, the machinery was way different back, but these cars are incredibly hard to drive, from what we understand. And he's just doing it back to back in situations you shouldn't. Like we've seen him come from the back of the grid and get wins. The guy is just a winner, and he just consistently does it again and again and again. He's kind of undeniable as the GOAT for me. He's the best that this sport's ever seen, and he's still driving. He's not even finished his career yet, and he's already the best. He's been knighted before he's retired. I think that's
and he's had a straight at Silverstone named after him, and he's driving on it. Like that doesn't.
Yeah,
happen
that
either.
doesn't happen. Like in most sports, you have to retire for a certain amount of time before you're put in the Hall of Fame and stuff. If there was a Hall of Fame for the Formula One, I don't know if there is actually, but he would be in there as a still playing kind of member. That's insane. He's unbelievable.
Ayaz on the live stream says, look at the look of disgust on Campy's face. Yes, you're not wrong. Let me just caveat this with saying we are not a Lewis Hamilton, British wankfest kind of podcast.
No.
It is just undeniable to look at this many victories and how he's performing out of the car this year to say, all right, he's changed a little bit from last year. All right, Campy, I've got a pen out for the time.
No,
Here we go.
Look, I don't think Lewis is the greatest driver we've ever seen. Results-wise, clearly the best results. Right place, right time. Moving to that Mercedes. But again, he's been beaten at times before. So got beat by Rosberg, which is not a good little stat on the greatest of all time sheet. Look, he does things behind the driving wheel that shock me at times, and he writes these stories, and it's unbelievable. As for LeBron being the GOAT, Tommy T, you absolute dipshit. That guy choked at every stage of his career and has to go back for a second and third time to get it right. MJ is God, all right? LeBron. Oh.
I've had my different podcasts, James.
Senna's the best driver we've ever seen. Senna's the GOAT.
We should have it.
Put Senna in this Mercedes the last 7 years. No one would have touched him for 7 years.
Tommy T, you don't have an opinion if Campy shouts louder. Sorry, what did you say?
That's true.
What podcast are we doing? The GOAT podcast?
We should do the GOAT podcast where we talk about
exclusively LeBron James and
share our thoughts. See if Campy can.
Mate, you brought it up.
Can dial it in.
If Campy can conform to a debate format instead of just yelling louder.
That's what wins debates, Tommy.
Well, lads, that's our
so do these bad
analysis.
boys.
Let's going well. Look, that's as I said, a team-by-team analysis. Thank you for that. All right, let's go through our fantasy names. This is a good one. There are heaps. There's stacks. I know some of you aren't totally stoked on this part of the segment. This segment of the podcast. So here's you can tune out from now if you like. But people who love it, here we go. In Russia, Caspin U, Steen N. 2 out of 3 Aussies ain't bad, Alex B. A win is better than pole, Raymond. I go Zumanoff. Patrick T. That's actually my favorite. I think I go Zumanoff. That was Lando on his hard ties. Ha 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 ha! So close yet so far, Lando. Jonathan C. Nikita's Sochi bad driver, James M. Very good. Sochio Drift, Haley H. Tommy T is going to roast my beans, Byron H. Are you in a hurry or just Russian? That's a very good dad joke, Josh L. Dangerous weekend to be a power unit, Michael S. That's true. That's sizable, Campy 2021, Aaron B. Actually, this is my favorite. I've just decided. My kink is Campy getting vaxxed, Nicholas H.
I don't really get that.
Wow. Not everyone is Brad
Different
Binder,
podcast.
Karim. Putin up the umbrella, Lydia S. Kissing
Good.
Putin's Haas, Thomas B. Williams, nicest grid on the team. Seamus, yes, you're not wrong. And a shout out to you,
Right,
Reese. Long-time listeners, first-time fantasy namer.
Thanks, Reese.
It's good news. I haven't updated where we are in the standings, but it's undoubtedly Tommy T ahead. Although if Campy...
Science was my turbo driver.
Oh, well,
so.
I was going to say, if you've
Dude,
left that
I
in
was
front...
on for a winner.
You
I
were
had-
too.
Oh, I was going to kill it, and then, yeah, nothing went my way. Lando screwed it. I had him turboed as well.
Me also, if that makes you feel any better, which it doesn't, because I am definitely out of this whole bloody thing now. But I love these fantasy names. Thanks for taking the time to log on and do that. As I said, you don't have to win to be a winner. The best fantasy names are going to receive some merch like this. I've got our Legends t-shirt on today. It says Jack, which is probably convenient if Jack Doohan gets in there as well. Then we don't have to have two Jacks. Jack, Alan, Mark, Daniel, and Oscar, because we're looking ahead to know that Oscar is
called
going
it
to be
already.
an F1 champion. Tommy T designing all of our merch, and he's very, very good at all of that. Well, lads, thank you to you, and thanks to you for listening or watching. You can grab the merch, as I said, from our store. That helps support the show significantly. But if you don't want to spend money and you want to support the show, hop over to our YouTube and subscribe. It honestly costs you nothing, and it makes the biggest difference to us. We are already talking about some very cool and interesting things to do on YouTube for next year. You're going to want to be involved with that. Don't miss out on that sort of stuff. We're on Instagram as well. As I said, you can interact with us over there. And a shout out to you for leaving a review if you've done that. Lads, we're going to Turkey in 2 weekends' time. For Danny, Rick, Campy, what do you think we can expect?
A win.
It took you so
A win.
long
A
to
win.
think about that. That's
Win
really,
and
really
fast
great.
slap, why not?
And Tommy T, what do you think?
I don't know.
This
He
is
does
where
like
Weber
to-
got his first win. So,
Huh?
again, it's a track that's difficult to pass. Danny Rick gets it right in quality, gets out in front, holds up
It's-
both Mercedes and both Red Bulls, and robs at home to win. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, it's going to be great. Well, lads, looking forward to that. Of course, next week, Monday, 5:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, we're going to do another Team Radio podcast, an Ask Us Anything style of podcast. I will be putting up an Instagram poll so you can ask some questions over the next couple of days. Otherwise, jump across to our Discord. You'll find the Team Radio questions part where you can pop a question in there, and the three of us will answer them next Monday, 5:30 on the live stream. Well, lads, thanks so much to you, and again, thanks to you for watching. It's time to end. We'll see you next week. Thanks, boys. Thanks, live stream. Thanks, chat. It's great to have you all here, and thanks to all of the guys from the US for staying up and watching this too. You guys are legends, and
Saw-
yeah,
I
hopefully.
saw Benny Steno drop by.
Oh, mate, we've had some
Benny
legends
Soos.
as well. And look, you also got called out. Billy Four Eyes Weber got his first win in Germany, Campy.
Oh, was it? Oh, no.
Backcheck at the
Loser.
end of the
Really?
podcast.
No, I could have sworn it was Turkey.
You're a
Mate,
loser.
the amount of stuff you just make up on the spot. At least you make it up on the spot now instead of umming and ahhing about it.
And can we address
Billy
his
Four Eyes,
cute
mate.
audio?
Yeah, quick. Also, chat. Campy's audio is not going through his microphone. It's going through his laptop.
You
microphone.
pressed the wrong
So
thing and you
Oh
can't change
no,
it
I
to
didn't.
start.
I'll take your photo. Default Rodecaster Pro.
on my end, it says default internal microphone built in.
Well,
I can see
All I'm
it.
hearing is you yelling in an echoey room, idiot.
Anyway, thanks, chat. See you guys later.